Hello, everybody. We're back again. I am Joshua Sorcy. I'm here with my dad.
Hey everybody, how you doing? My name is Mark. I'm the founder of Spirit, and I hope everybody's having a really good weekend. It's Saturday, January 25th, and we are broadcasting live from Fernley, Nevada, United States. And just in case we have any listeners out there outside the country, um, and I would just like to, take this moment to thank all of our followers. You guys have been great. You loyal. As far as following all of our stuff that we post on Facebook, and now that we're going into podcasts as well to share with listeners. That appreciate everybody who's interested in this research in this field. As we emphasize a lot, we're very passionate about what we do. We're not thrill seekers by no means. And for those of you that want to see some of our documentation, that we have all of our stuff on Facebook. So you can go into Facebook, type in the search, Spirit, no periods in between the letters, just type in Spirit, and you should see an icon next to the word that is a picture of a ghost guy wearing a cowboy hat. That's part of one of our icons that we use. So there again, I want to say thanks again,
And thank you to all the friends and family that are now following. I know a lot of you don't listen to podcasts regularly, but I do appreciate everything you guys are doing. You're awesome. Thank you again.
So anyways, we really appreciate that. So I guess that will wrap it up.
And then, wait, we're not done yet.
We're not done yet?
No,
Oh,
no.
holy
No.
crap. Okay, well.
We just started.
Okay. Well then,
Jesus.
well, let's get on the ball here.
Also, real quick, we did share on our Facebook page and our own personal pages, but just in case the podcasts aren't where you want to listen to or what you normally listen to, as of right now, we have our podcast up and running on Google Play, Spotify, and iTunes. Soon we'll have it up on Pandora and also iHeartRadio. We're just waiting for the approval on that right now.
So, being that Josh just mentioned that to all of you, just in case he didn't mention, share this with your friends, family, neighbors, whoever that might be interested in listening to, this kind of information, because we're going to be talking about experiences. We're going to be talking about things that we've done, and we're also going to be educating the public and the listeners and followers about a great many things that range from metaphysics to personal experiences, and we may be answering a lot of questions. And if you guys have questions, hit us up on Facebook and we'll get right back to you.
Exactly. So today, we're going to talk about some past experiences that brought us into the paranormal. They're fun, they're exciting, they're interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and let my dad start off. And here he goes.
The first time
Excuse me.
I had a paranormal experience, my mom told me that I had a paranormal experience when I was probably about 2 years old, and
Did you say paranormal?
I might have said paranormal.
Paranormal.
That's kind of like our way of saying, in a shorter version,
Yeah.
But I meant to say paranormal. But I appreciate you being my editor, though.
I
It's
will always be here for you.
It's always good to have an editor on your side. So, and you're literally on my side.
Yeah,
So,
technically, we're touching elbows right
we're
now.
at practically 3 inches from each other.
It's our
So,
weenus.
yeah. So, anyways, my mom had mentioned to me that I had like seizures, and seizures don't run in our family. It's not a normal health condition of mine even today, and this stems from a practice that her little sister was doing in the home that my grandmother had. And what she was doing is she was practicing black magic. And So in the room, my mom went to go check on me, and like I said, I was about 2 years old. I was sleeping in my aunt's room. I was in her bed, and my mom walked in there, and her room was like ice cold, and I was convulsing, having basically like a seizure, and so that was the first incident that my mom told me. Now the one that I remember
But
is
wait,
that
are you sure that you just weren't like freezing and shaking?
no, because I was not coherent.
Oh.
She said that my eyes were rolled back in my head, so they rushed me off to the hospital. And once I got there, everything was fine. I was normal. All my vitals were good and everything, and brought home. So my mom really, truly believes that what my aunt was practicing in her room of the freezing cold temperature compared to just outside her door in the hallway, it was warm, a nice, comfortable home temperature. Okay.
Okay.
So then about 3 years later, I was about 5 years old, and my mom and me and my little brother, and my brother was about 6 months old. I was probably about 5. We were sharing a room together, and he was crying in the middle of the night and woke me up. So I got up, and I told my mom, I said, hey, I said, the baby's crying. I said, I can't sleep. And she said, well, go climb in my bed, So I went down the hallway, and my mom, I went into my mom's room, and
Did you knock first?
no, because the door was wide open.
Oh.
Okay, because there was nobody in there. So
Okay.
it was just my mom was in the kitchen. It was about 11 o'clock at night. She was doing some studying because she was a nurse at the time, and so I crawled into her bed. She had a great big king size bed. And keep in mind, for those that are listening, how this ties into the first experience that my mom told me that I had, is that you keep in the back of your mind before I draw this visual for you, is that her sister practiced black magic, and her sister,
The opposite of white.
yes, and you're a smart man. You're a smart
I am
man.
very in tune.
Yeah, that's
now.
right. So anyways, because of her practicing that, if we're going to be educating a lot about spirit attachments and how spirits follow, good and bad, both follow us around and stuff. So my aunt would come over when my mom would be working or at school, and babysit us. So she would be in the home. So now I'm going to go back to when the baby woke me up at 11 o'clock at night, and I told my mom I can't sleep. She said to go crawl in her bed, and I went into her room, and just to draw the visual here, this is like a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment in an apartment complex. So at the end of the hall, I went into her room. She's got a great big king size bed, and on the far side of the room there was 2 windows, probably about maybe 8 feet apart, spread apart from each other, and the bed was centered in the middle of the other wall, so or adjacent. So anyways, I laid down, and I was laying on the side of the bed that was right on the edge, closest to the window wall side of the bed. And as I started to doze off, I felt like somebody had taken their finger and tapped me on the forehead. And I didn't think anything of it at the moment, but I just realized that I had that sensation. And then within about 30 seconds to a minute later, it did it again, but more profound. It wasn't aggressive, but more, I could feel it even more. And I realized that, wow, I'm, something here. And I open my eyes, and I see at the edge of the bed, right in front of me, 3 heads. And they were like a pale white in color. They had red eyes. They all had horns, and each one of them, their horns were and like different. It wasn't like one was kind of like, straight up, one was kind of curved down, one was kind of heading towards the front of, towards his nose, and they had like one had points on them, another one had little furries behind it and everything. And I looked at them, and they all smiled at me, and they had all sharp teeth, and they were just smiling at me, and it freaked me out. I jumped up, and I was probably out of that room, probably like, I don't know, half a second. I mean, yeah, I was gone, flashed down the hall. And my mom, knowing about what her sister does, she was open-minded, to my complaint, because I went and told her what I just experienced, and she said, "Okay, honey, just kind of sit over here on the kitchen table."
To interrupt really quick, so were they just like floating heads, or were they attached to a body?
You know what? All I could see is the head and part of the shoulders, but I couldn't see their whole body. That's all I saw.
So do you think it was like one?
And they were small. They were like small, like almost like baby size. Like if they were like a 2 or 3 year old child,
Okay.
they were like that size.
Now, do you think like there was like 3 heads on one body? It
Could have been, but I would have to say that this was one of those things that we traditionally, and I'll explain later on what I'm talking about, is what we would consider those demonic entities.
For sure.
Okay.
I mean I wouldn't picture a human trying to look like that. That'd be pretty freaky.
Unless it's Halloween, right?
Unless it's Halloween.
Right.
Was it Halloween?
And it was not.
It was
It
not,
was several. I think it was in the summertime when that happened. But anyways, so I tell my mom about what I just experienced. So she said, "Okay, honey, sit here at the kitchen table," and then she goes to the phone and she calls the Catholic priest and it tells him, what just happened. And he goes, "Okay," he goes, "I'm coming over right now." And keep in mind, this is after 11 o'clock at night. So the priest,
she actually was legit listening to you to call a Catholic priest to.
she felt that because of knowing what her sister is into and what I just experienced, that this has gone to a level that she needed to act on it and call for help.
That's like on like the best case scenario for these type of things.
Right.
Just to get that help right away.
Right, and so she calls, instead of, trying to, undermine the situation by sitting there, and she never said, "Oh, honey, you were just dreaming," or anything, or something like that. No, she didn't even question, because she had a pretty good idea of what was going on, but she didn't know what to do by herself. So she calls the Catholic priest, and he tells her to have me draw a picture with my crayons on a piece of paper while he's on his way. Okay, so I do, and I'm drawing exactly what I remember these figures that I saw in that moment on the paper. He walks in, he shakes my hand, he introduces himself, and he sees my my crayon picture drawing, and right away he goes, "Yeah, you got something going on here. I have to bless the house." So he goes and blesses the house. And that was pretty much it for many years. I didn't have another a reoccurrence like that, but I had other experiences, and the other experiences were things of that we would have like sleep paralysis, but here I'm totally awake and feeling like I'm being compressed, and then I would just kind of instead of panicking, I would just think to myself that I'm stronger than whatever this is, and I just projected my energy outward, and then eventually it'd leave me alone, And I'll get more into all about that, because that pertains a little bit on the metaphysics that I will share later on. But anyways, that's where I had my first paranormal experience. And then for years, as growing up, as getting into my teens and into my early adulthood, I started noticing things that I couldn't explain. And I don't mean like being visited by ghosts or anything like that, but people were drawn to me. they would confide into me. They would seek me out. They would look for me from everything from protection to advice to just feeling safe to be around. And I just thought, well, I must be a nice guy. It's the only thing I could think of. I didn't really understand all about metaphysics and how we project ourselves. And there again, I'll get on that topic another time. But so that's what led me up to this. And so and then when in 2015, when after you got out of the military, and you were living in Carson, we kind of reconnected again, because you were overseas and everything. Is that we were having a barbecue. And we were just happened to, shooting the shit. And
wasn't Marcus there too?
Yeah, Marcus was there too. And and those of you that don't know who we're talking about, Marcus is my youngest son. He was, part of our team for a little while, and just he did his own thing. So we hope that maybe one day, he'll rejoin us. But anyways, yeah, Marcus was there. And we were, sitting around, we were having a conversation, and we just started talking about interesting TV shows. And one of the TV shows that inspired us to where we are right now.
Get ready for the big shocker.
That is, and those of you are probably going to fall over in your seat, so hang on to your hat. Yep. Is that we didn't know that we were all watching Ghost Adventures, with Zach Bagans and his crew and everything like that. So that was our inspiration, and then from there we just kind of learned a lot, studied a lot, and developed our sense of of direction of where we wanted to take this. And so once we discovered that, then we wanted to, and this is where I'm going to need some of your input on this, is that we thought, well, hey, you know what, let's, check this out for ourselves. So I went to Walmart and I bought 3 cheapy digital recorders. And the reason why I say cheapy is because they were the lower end that is non-transferable. It will record, but you couldn't transfer what you recorded to anything as a document. So I just went and got something, and we rejoined at your house. And we did an EVP session. And those of you that don't know what EVP is, it's electronic voice phenomena, okay? And we were just asking simple questions, basic questions. And I asked, is there anybody here that is attached to me? And after, a few seconds went by, I played it back, and you heard Class A, as clear as bell. It said, yes, and I was just like, wow, that is so cool. So then I got up off the couch, and I wanted to try something else. And
so we started doing jumping jacks to really get the spirits going.
Right, because I was feeling energetic. I was excited,
share that energy.
Yeah, and I wanted to really motivate them to, hey, let's get involved here,
Yeah.
So I had my digital camera with me, and I took I think it was 3 or 4 still pictures back to back at Marcus. And there was all kinds of orbs. I mean, there was one over here by his shoulder, another one in front of him, one down by his chest, and I think that there was 3 or 4 of them that I saw in the picture, and I matched them up or compared them to the other simultaneous ones I took right after each other, and it was the same. And then the other one was the last one that I took. It was gone.
Yeah.
So
we actually found quite a lot of evidence in the house. There was an aggressive spirit that we heard through EVP that was attached to my son and wanted our son. And we actually learned from that point on that my grandma was actually still hanging around. And there was an argument going on between her and this other spirit. And he kept saying Hunter, Hunter, he's mine. And then all of a sudden you hear my grandma's voice, in her tone and everything. And she goes, over my dead body. And we were like, holy crap, that is really, really cool. And then we also got some pictures. There's one picture I think Marcus took of it was over in my direction.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was this really bright orb that just was going like right by my arm. Like it had color to it. It was
You
really
know,
cool.
one of the things that I thought was really interesting is that I remember, and this is where I want you to share to our listeners because you know more of the details of this, but I remember that, and we're going to talk about a spirit that we still believe is with us today, especially at Josh's house, but that Josh's grandma Kathy had passed away, I think about 6 years ago or something like
Yeah,
that.
roughly.
Yeah, and so she had passed away, and Josh had inherited a spoon rack from her, and the spoon rack is in the shape of the United States, and every state has their own spoon. And we're going to talk a little bit about that spoon rack, but I'm going to let Josh explain what it was. But I remember you calling me on the phone, and because you did an EVP session to communicate with her, and and you're going to explain what led you up to trying to communicate with her. And I remember you asking her, what was it? I think it was something that.
Like personal questions.
It was
that only-
it was personal questions, but it had to do with something like, okay, because she was a very religious woman.
Oh, yes.
Okay, and I remember, as a kid, she was religious. She always went to her congregation and got together, to do their thing every Saturday and Sunday, and sometimes in the middle of the week. But anyways. You asked her a question like, okay, Grandma, why are you here? I mean, you asked her if there was a heaven, and she said yes, on the digital recorder. And then you asked her, okay, well then, thinking that she's very religious, if there's a heaven, why is she here?
Yeah,
Why?
why?
And the answer was, she said, I don't know. And then you called me up on the phone and you said, Dad, what do you take from that? And I said, there's a lot of things that we are taught traditionally, and I'm not trying to ridicule or down talk religion. I think that whatever faith that you belong to is your own personal choice, okay? However, some of the things that were traditionally, and I'll say that again, some of the things that we are traditionally taught are in question. There's no hard facts on certain things, okay? So it told me, when you told me that she answered that way, then it dawned on me that in their world, in that space, time, and dimension, when we transform into energy, that she has choice. There's choice involved there, and this is because I'm not saying I don't believe in God, by no means. I believe that we have a higher a power that governs us, okay, but just to stay neutral, okay, because I'm a spiritual person, and I have a religious background as well. But the thing is that. I thought that was a really interesting take from that, and I want you to share the rest of why that led up into that, because I think our listeners are really going to enjoy that, because that was our very first experiment that she just happened to be there talking to you, and what you did to prove that it was her.
Yeah. So obviously, that when you're contacting a spirit, whether it's through EVP, on a Ouija board, a seance, whatever you're doing, no matter what, like you're still kind of opening a door because of the energy that your body's putting into this situation. So a lot of people would think, okay, well, when you come in contact with what you would say is a air quotes deceased family member, how do you know for sure that that's them? What if it's just something, bad or
Malicious,
yeah.
that has malicious intent, that it wants you to think that this. So we've learned, and I don't mean to interrupt you, Josh, but one of the things that we've learned by doing these investigations is that some of you might be familiar with court settings of how a lawyer would get yelled by at the other lawyer, objection, Your Honor, because of leading the witness. So we don't lead the questions. We, even if we get information about a location or a place, person, whatever it is, that we don't come back and say, "Oh, is it John that we're speaking to?" Because we just gave it away. So.
Yeah. So what my dad suggested, he's like, to make sure when you're communicating with her, to make sure that it's her, he says, come up with a couple of questions in your head, in your mind. Do not discuss them with anybody. Just on the fly, when you're doing the recording, ask the questions. So I went to go ahead and start the EVP, and I was letting her know, hey, Grandma, if this is really you, I'm here. I'm going to talk to you. I want to ask you some questions because I just want to make sure it's really you. So I came up with 3 questions, and she answered them, and this is how it went. So I said, Grandma, what is your oldest daughter's middle name? And obviously at the time I didn't hear it, but after review she did say Lynn as the middle name, and I said, okay, Grandma, what is one of your most favorite songs that you would sing all the time when you were alive? And also during the review, she was starting to hum Over the Rainbow, and that was one of her favorite songs. And then lastly, of course I have to add some kind of humor, but
Oh yeah, I remember this part. That was funny.
when I was a kid and growing up around her, for some reason I always told my grandma, I said, Grandma, your feet smell like donuts. Like straight up donuts. And so that was like a thing between me and her, and the family, of course. So like I asked her, I said, Grandma, what did I always say that your feet smelt like? And she responded with donuts. So I talked to my dad, consulted him about that, and he was like, what do you think? She answered everything spot on, and I didn't discuss these prior. And so, my belief that it was really her. She legit answered either that, or there is something else that's been following me for forever and knows everything about me. But I do like to believe that it's her and that she's watching over my oldest.
Well, and that's one of the things that you asked her in another EVP session when you tried to communicate with her again, is that you asked her, what is she doing there? And she disclosed that she was there for Hunter. And Hunter is my grandson, Josh's son.
That she has never met.
That she's never met, but yet she proclaims to stick around and watch over him. And she's also disclosed to Josh that she, because he asked her, where do you go, Grandma? Do you stay here all the time to watch over Hunter? And she said, no. She goes, I visit your mom. And then she wouldn't, but she doesn't go and visit her youngest, or not her youngest, but the second to the youngest of Emily. She never goes saw her or Kenton.
Nope. It's just me and Hunter and my mom that she visits.
Which was kind of interesting. We don't know, and there again, those of you that are listening, this field of research is like a puzzle. It's connecting the dots, and sometimes you don't get the answers all the right away, and even if you demand it, because you'll sit there and see some TV shows or movies, and the guy will sit there, I demand you to speak to me, and spirits are people just like you and I. If they don't want to talk to you, they're not going to talk.
I had a total D&D flashback when you were talking like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Man.
I remember those days. So anyways, go ahead and I want you to kind of lead toward, because after that EVP session, and she disclosed the thing about feet smelling like donuts and everything like that. Explain to me or explain to the listeners that when you were laying in bed in relationship to the spoon rack. Remember that?
Which time?
That was when you were laying in the bed and you heard something drop in the kitchen.
Oh, the one of the spoons.
Yeah.
One of the spoons just happened to drop, and the funny thing was, it was a spoon. where I had been up in Fort Drum, New York. It's I was living in New York for a while, and the only spoon that dropped off the rack happened to be one of the only New York spoon that was up there, and I thought that was kind of funny. And no one was walking around or anything.
What time
like
was
that.
it at night? Would you say it was like after like 11 or 12 or something?
It was around probably around
Yeah.
about midnight ish.
So it was just you and Kirsten and then Hunter was the only ones in the home.
Yep.
And it was
Everyone was in bed.
everybody was in bed. And so what did you do when you heard that sound in the kitchen?
I got up because I thought someone was breaking in the house. So I mean, I didn't have a gun at the time, but I did have a knife, and I was kind of like walking around the house, checking all the doors, and there was nothing. It was just that one spoon that had fallen off. And I had a lot of experiences even after that with her being around. Like, this is somewhat recent and within the last year. I just want to share this really quick. I was playing, because I am a gamer a little bit here and there. I was playing Grand Theft Auto, and I was driving around my car, and Pat Benatar's song, what is that song called? Shadows of the Night. Okay, so that song was playing in the car that I was driving, and I was kind of like humming to it, and all of a sudden from the kitchen area, I hear her voice, as clear as day, sing along with the song. And I was like, I stopped doing what I was doing, and I was like looking around. I'm like, oh my God, like my grandma is like in the kitchen right now. So I'm obviously she's dead, but I went to the kitchen to see, and there was nothing there. No one's there. I was the only person in the house at the time, and that was just really cool. It's just like the reassurance of everything that she's done to show me that she's there. It's really cool.
To draw the visual back to the spoon rack, okay, I remember you were explaining to me that when you got up, you went into the kitchen to investigate of what did you hear, okay? And to draw the visual for our listeners, he walks into the kitchen, and the kitchen table was a small kitchen table. It was kind of like more of a breakfast nook type because the kitchen was small. It's one end of the kitchen is up against the wall, and right next to the kitchen, on that same wall that the table is butted up against, is the patio door. Okay. On that wall, that same wall that the table is butted up against, right above, say about mid, I don't know, 2.5 feet or so, midway up the wall, is hanging of this spoon rack that's in the shape of the United States. It's got a spoon for every state there. And Josh goes in there, and he's looking around, trying to figure out what did he hear, and he sees the new.
Just to clarify, I wasn't fingering anything out that time.
Well,
I was concerned. It was not in that kind of mood, so.
Well, I mean, yeah, you never know. I mean, you could have, it could have been like an after thing that could have helped motivate you to get up and then go into the kitchen because
really
you get
going.
the munchies, right afterwards, a recharge. Anyways, not to get off topic, but so he sees the New York spoon laying on the table. Okay, now, keep in mind that this spoon rack, the way that these spoons sit on that spoon rack, you have to actually lift the spoon up and over this little wooden curb. And this is part of the visual I'm drawing for you. So Josh is trying to figure out, how did this spoon fall onto the table? Okay, so he thought, okay,
trying to debunk it,
yeah,
basically.
he's trying to debunk it. So he's stomping on the floor, nothing happens. Okay, he opens up the door that the same wall that the spoon rack is on, and he slams it hard. Nothing happens. So we believe, and there again, I'm not trying to coerce or lead anybody into our beliefs or anything like that, but it seemed very evident as far as facts here is that she was trying to get his attention. And I mean his grandmother, because she's the one that inherited, or she gave him this as an inheritance gift, and that she was trying to get his attention, and to her, of her knowledge of where his last whereabouts was New York, and this New York spoon And after he debunked, shaking, everything, and none of the other spoons would fall off except for this New York spoon. And I thought that was compelling evidence,
And of all the spoons that are on that rack, I mean, they're from all over the world and a lot of in the United States. And then the one New York spoon that's on there happens to fall where I used to be stationed. It's kind of like, those connections. I know that some of you might think it's like reaching, but what are the chances of that happening,
I mean, and that's one of the things that we've learned even early on from the things that we've studied on documentations and other investigators that have been doing this for years, is that's one of the things that we don't get overly excited of the easy evidence. We try everything we can based on scientific basis to debunk.
We try to approach, even though we are not skeptics, because we do believe in the paranormal, but we approach it as a skeptic would. Be like, okay, so if a door closes, we're not going to be like, oh, lordy, their door closed, there's ghosts up in here. No.
You do that pretty good, Can you do that again?
Oh, lordy,
Yeah,
oh.
yeah.
Anyway, come visit me at the local library. So, we make sure that if you walk by the door, does it move? Was there a draft? Are there windows open? Was there anybody else in the building? We go through all those steps, and if there's nothing that makes sense for that door to have opened by itself, then it goes under unexplained. Not
Right.
strictly paranormal, but unexplained.
And I'm glad that you said that, because that's exactly what I was thinking of when you were explaining that as what we do, is because we don't, even if we debunk, something, or we don't debunk it, and it turns out to be something, because it caught our attention to lead us into trying to debunk it, then we conclude it with unexplained. Unless we have that hard, cold, actual evidence, documentation of audio, video, everything kind of ties together like a puzzle. Like I said, it's like putting a puzzle together, dealing in this kind of work and research. And when we get down to that, sometimes we have to just label it as that was weird. It was cool, but it was weird, and we're going to have to say that was unexplained.
Yeah,
and
unless it's irrefutable evidence, like we caught a ghost manifesting in, I wouldn't say the flesh, manifesting, coming to a physical form, walking up to me, slapping me in the face, and be like, that ghost just slapped me. Other than that, it's going to have to be unexplained, because you never know.
Right.
We debunk it as best we can, so.
Now, I'm going to take us back to the beginning of this podcast for just a second, because I want our listeners to know that this is trying to get to know me, the founder, and as well as you, Josh, and our experiences of what led us into this interest of paranormal and studying this and researching and investigating. Is that we've had other experiences while we've been investigators that we will share on other episodes of our podcast. But what we explained today isn't the only thing that we've encountered that we're basing everything off. So don't take what we're telling you that we've had a lot of other credible evidence that you'll find very interesting as the weeks go on and we share more with you.
Yeah. So when I was a kid, I started experiencing things at a young age. My mom thought I was crazy. She took me actually to a psychiatrist, and I remember listening or eavesdropping. And the psychiatrist is like, "Oh, he's just young and has an active imagination." Well, you know what? You're full of shit, is what you are. I know what I saw. So my very first experience that led to this whole thing for me being here today, I was in the 5th grade, and I was living up in Alturas, California. And we had this house, and it was after school. I came home. I had a key. No one else was home. I came home, did my homework. Did I mention that I came home? So anyway, I did my homework, and then after homework, I wanted to play with my toys, and because I wasn't allowed to play any kind of games or anything during the week, so I was in the room playing with my cars and stuff. And during the middle of my game, one of my cars in the game I was playing blew up, so I just tossed the car out in the hallway. Well, a little bit later, I finished up the game and I was cleaning up, and because I think I knew my mom was going to be home soon or something, so I crawled to the hallway to go pick up the car, and I noticed something was standing in the hallway on the left, like at the end of the hallway in the dining area, and it really caught me by surprise because I was supposed to be the only one home. And I remember like just kind of slowly looking, and there was this man standing there, and he had like a dark, like wool robe on, like a thick robe. He was wearing a hood over his face, but he was looking up enough to where I could see the features of him, and his eyes, his nose. He had facial hair, and I remember his eyes specifically, like they were glowing blue. Have you guys ever seen? I guess
I've never seen. I've never seen any. Even today, when we've had experiences with some of the spirits that try to manifest, I've never seen glowing blue eyes.
It was a trip. It was kind of like I was in the Game of Thrones and the Night King was coming after me or something. But anyway, so I was looking at this guy, and his eyes were really glowing blue, and I remember seeing a tear roll down the left side of his face. And then he turns and walks to my parents' bedroom. And here I am being a fifth grader. I probably, 10 years old, around there.
Mm-hmm.
And I was scared shitless. So I did the best thing I could do. I went in my room. I grabbed my orange wiffle ball bat. And I went to go follow where this person went.
I used to have one of those. I don't mean to interrupt. One of those wiffle ball bats. I used to have one of those. I used to chase my aunt around the house, wanting to beat her because, she was always antagonizing me. And don't get that wrong. I'm not a woman abuser or anything like that. It's just that my aunt used to, torment me when I was real young, when I was like 3-4 years old, and I would grab my wiffle ball bat and chase her around the house.
So anyway, I went ahead and I followed where I saw the person go, and usually like when you open up my parents' door at that house, the door makes a noise. Well, I don't recall it ever making a noise, but I knew that's where that person went. So I went in the room, turned on the light, looked around, looked under the bed, looked in the closet. There was no one there. And then I went, because their bedroom had a door that went out to the backyard. So I opened up that door, and my black lab, Sadie, she was laying there right in front of the door. And if anybody had gone out there, whether it was me, a stranger, my mom, whoever, if anybody had gone out that door, she'd be up and following them and not just sitting there sleeping. So I'm like, okay, so that was weird. I didn't really know what to do about that. And then I do remember, like, I recognized the person, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And also, like, this is my first experience with that kind of stuff. So, of course, I didn't think it could be possibly a deceased friend, relative, or whatever. Well, later that day, my mom came home, and she was kind of upset, and she's like, I have some bad news for you, or for everybody, I guess. And I'm like, okay, what? And she goes, remember, and I cannot remember his name for the life of me. It's been too long. But she goes, remember this guy? And I'm like, yeah. And she goes, well, him and his son went up to a lake, and there was still some ice in the lake, and a big windstorm came through and tipped the boat over, and they both drowned. And that's when, like, it clicked. I'm like, oh my fucking God. Obviously, I didn't say that at that age.
Yeah, your mom would have washed your mouth out with soap.
Or my brain or something,
yeah.
Right? And so, but I'm like, oh my God, that was that guy. He was in my house. And I told my mom, like, I saw him today. Mm-hmm. He was in the house wearing a robe, and he was crying. And I don't know, maybe like we had a good enough bond that he just wanted to say goodbye, or I don't know. But that was my very first experience that sort of really kind of leading things that way. Now, the other thing I want to talk to you guys about was the next thing that I remember experiencing up in Alturas. And Alturas, if you guys have never been up there, there's a lot of history.
And this is, for those of our listeners, I just want to jump in there, Josh, is that Alturas, the location that he's talking about, is in Northern California, almost at the tip top of the state. And he's going to go ahead and discuss what he experienced up there when he was younger.
So obviously, being a kid, growing up in there, we all have imaginations. There wasn't a lot to do up there. It was a very small town. You can imagine what that's like. So, and I will admit, I love mystical creatures. I love the lore and the myths and all that stuff. Always have. It's always fascinated me. But when it came time to what I'm about to tell you guys, it really kind of put things in perspective for me, and I'm still not sure how I feel, whether I'm on the left or right side of this fence. But I want to share this with you guys and see what you guys think and comment whatever you guys have to tell me. But anyway, so we ended up moving from that first house, and we got in a house that was kind of like out more in the country where the bigger pine trees are and everything. And it was off a road called Pencil Road, and that road always kind of creeped me out. It was just a weird, eerie road. And we moved into this house that was painted like a barn. It was like the red with the white trimming. And one of the creepiest factors about this house, it was on about 2.5 acres of land, and the entire back part of this property, every night, whether it was spring, fall, summer, winter, whatever, the ground would always create like this about 1.5 to 2 feet of fog off the ground, like where you couldn't see the ground. It was like the filmmakers came there to film creepy stuff, and they let the foggers on, and they just continued to go on. It was weird. But to add to more to that is that the back part of the yard, there was a nice little section of it that was a pet cemetery or animal cemetery from the previous owners. They had horses, cats, dogs. They had little tiny
gerbils?
No, not gerbils. They had like little tiny crosses that said like the pet name,
yeah.
And like kind of what it was, like Pete the horse,
like a headstone.
Kind of like that, but
markers.
Way less fancy.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Markers, basically. Here lies Jed
horse. Anyway, so that was the creepy factor there. But we were there for probably 6 months or so. And me and my brother, we shared a room, and our room I had a window coming off the front of the house, and there was a couple big trees, on the other side of the driveway. And we were playing a game, and I remember something was catching my attention, like that was going on in the tree. And I would kind of like quickly look at it and go back to the game, and I didn't pay attention to it at first, but then it kept doing it, and I decided to pause the game and look. And so I looked, and the branches of this tree would like get weighted down and then spring back up, like something was on the branch and had just jumped off.
But there was nothing on the branch.
Not that I could see.
Wow, okay.
I mean, at the time I couldn't see anything.
Huh.
But then I kept looking, and every once in a while I would get this glimpse of whatever was in the tree. It was like a long tail, and it was like a tannish, yellowish color. And they were moving pretty quickly, but I could tell that it definitely wasn't made out of fur.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, I don't know, it almost looked like scaly.
What color?
It was like a yellow tan color.
Like a yellow tan color,
yeah.
Huh?
And it had a scaly kind of, I mean, it's hard to see, it was so fast, but it looked I would have to say scaly would be the best definition.
So it didn't stick around for you to get a real clear picture of it, right?
It did. I couldn't see the full body of it.
Okay.
But it did stick around long enough for my brother to see it, because
Mm-hmm.
I told him to come look, and he was like, "What the hell is that?" And I'm like, "I don't know."
Huh.
But there was multiple of them in the tree. There's like probably 3 or 4.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, "Oh, all right, we gotta tell our parents." And so I'm like, "Mom, get in here!" And she's like, "I'm cooking dinner, damn it!" And I'm like, "Well, you can stop for a second." So she comes in there. I said, look at the tree. And she's like, what? And she's looking and she sees the same thing we're seeing. And she goes, oh my God, what is that? I'm like, I have no idea. And so she calls my stepdad in, and he comes in and he's like, what's going on, guys? And he's looking, and I'm like, let's watch the tree. And he starts seeing the branches do its thing, and then he sees one of the tails. And so he's like, what the hell? So knowing him, he went and got his shotgun. He opened up the front door, turned on the porch light, and as soon as he got to the edge of the porch and was about to step down onto the stairs, all of a sudden, almost all of the branches on the tree were like hunkered down and then just sprung back up all over the tree. And the things that were in the tree at that point had left. Now, what the hell was it? Did they just, whatever it was, did it jump to another tree? Did it freaking fly out of the tree? I don't know. But the next one, this is what really, I don't know how to explain this one, but I'll just tell you, this won't take very much longer. In the same room, my brother was gone visiting his mother, and I had my bed, and next to my bed, there was a window. And it was a school night, so I was trying to get some sleep, and all of a sudden I hear what sounded like a metal tapping on the window. And it went tap, tap, tap. And it kind of like woke me up, and I'm like, what is that? And it went tap, tap, tap again. And every time it tapped, it was always in threes.
I was just going to say that's
like the Holy Trinity mocking.
Right, the mocking thing, yeah.
But I'm like, and I was laying there after it was really starting to scare me. I'm like, okay, so let's kind of go through this. It's definitely not a tree because there's no trees near the window. Maybe it's an owl. Maybe an owl saw some kind of light and it's trying to get in the window, and it's for some reason tapping in threes. Maybe it's showing me that it can count or something. I was trying to rationalize it, so I was laying there and it kept doing it.
The owls can count. Have you ever watched those Tootsie Roll commercials?
They can, yeah.
That's right.
At their three, they eat.
Yeah, they eat the whole sucker.
Oh my God! So it probably could have been an owl.
It could have been.
Shit.
You know. So, anyways, no.
So I finally mustered up the courage to look, and it took everything out of me to do it. And I leaned over the bed to look out the window. I had my eyes closed, and I opened up my eyes really slowly. And I remember just looking, and there was this huge, like, claw pointing at me. Like had a finger. The index finger was pointed at me, and they had like claws at the end of each finger. And I remember just looking up the arm, and I seen it standing next to a tree, and a tall pine tree, and it was like as tall as the pine tree. And mind you, I couldn't see a lot of detail. It was more of like a silhouette of it.
So in the silhouette figure that you saw, how tall would you say that is? I mean, what would you say? 6 foot?
No.
Taller?
Way taller. It was probably at least 30 feet.
Wow.
At least. Probably a little bit bigger than that. But I remember like the silhouette, I could see what looked like folded wings on its back. I could see horns coming off of its head, and its eyes were like this orangish kind of red glow. And it was pointing at me and just staring. And I have never felt so scared in my life. The only thing that I could think of doing at the time was just hiding under the covers.
How old were you then?
Oh, I was probably in 6th grade at that moment.
Oh, okay.
So I'm still fairly young.
Yeah. And this kind of all these experiences that you've had just brought a thought to my head. That something that we've done as an experiment as in our investigations. Do you remember that time when you moved from your other house where you and Kirsten were living to the other house, okay? And we went and bought one of those SLS devices.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Before I go forward with that, SLS stands for Structured Light Sensor. You can look it up. Some of you that watch some of the ghost investigation documentary shows, whatever it is that you like to watch, whether it's Ghost Adventures or Haunted Collector or whatever it is that you like to watch, they use this device. And we got one, and we weren't really sure what to think of it. So we got one, and so I drove over to Josh's house, and we had planned on experimenting to kind of get familiar with this device since we just bought it. And he made sure that there was nobody home. So when I got there, it was just him and I. There was nobody there. And so I said, okay, well, go ahead and, get this thing going and get it, it's firing up its program and everything. And so while he's doing that, I'm standing in the middle of his living room, and I'm thinking that maybe I need to, in order for this device to work, I want to try to speak out and see what spirits that we've done EVP sessions with at his house before would be willing to talk, and maybe we might be able to use the SLS device to map them in. Now, the SLS device, when you point it in the direction of where a spirit's present is, okay, where they're standing or walking or whatever, it will map in on our screen as a stick figure. Okay, so I'm in the living room. I'm putting on my headphones, I'm plugging into my digital recorder, and then my digital recorder, I plugged in a very sensitive microphone. So it amplifies the microphone of the digital recorder itself. And I mean, it's so sensitive that I kid you not, you could hear a flea fart.
Totally.
I mean, it's that sensitive. So I'm trying to speak to see if there's any spirit going on, and all of a sudden, as Josh is holding the SLS and he's got it pointed down towards the ground because he's looking at the screen, and all of a sudden I start to feel like this static electric charge feeling on the back of both my elbows. Remember that? Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting there going, Josh, this is strange, man. I said, I'm getting this, electric, like if somebody's holding me or touching me from the back of my, elbows. And that's when he panned up to me with the SLS and aimed it towards me. And he goes, holy crap, Dad. He goes, you have a spirit behind you. It was mapping in. It was crazy. And seeing that mapped in for the first time, that was exciting. And so we're trying to communicate with this spirit. And one of the things that we thought was really interesting is that this spirit that was mapping in, he wanted to stay right by me. And he was, behind me, then he was aside of me, and then he was in front of me, and I was trying to get him to talk so I could hear his voice and have a conversation with him through my headphones so I can listen to him live in the moment. And he would never talk, but one of the things that we discovered is that, if you remember, he mapped in with no head.
Yep, there was usually, like on the thing, it shows like a little line up for where the neck and the head would be. There was no line.
Yeah, and so we thought that was, it was interesting, maybe that's why he couldn't talk, I don't know. But then he proceeded to walk away from me, and he went over to this bookshelf in the living room. And the bookshelf wasn't really full. It was more like it was holding DVDs and movies and stuff like that. And he proceeds to climb it up. Now Josh is still mapping him in, and I'm behind Josh watching the spirit climbing up this bookshelf. And so I tell the spirit, I said, get off there. You don't climb on furniture. That would be like me walking on your ghost bed or something.
Rude.
Yeah. So I told him, I said, get down from there right now. I said, that's just not right. So he gets down, and we're assuming from our experience of what we're feeling and everything, and we'll explain that in another episode, but that it was a he, Yeah. And so anyways, he gets down, and I coaxed him over. I said, you know what, come back over to me. And then I stuck both my arms out in front of me, and I said, try to crawl up into my arms, and
Because he's kind of a smaller figure. It's probably like a kid or something.
yeah, because he was shorter than me.
Way shorter.
Yeah, and so I said, here, and so I kind of crouched and I said, here, crawl up into my arms. And Josh started laughing, and what was the spirit doing?
It was literally sticking its ass in his face.
Yeah, and I'm sitting there, great. And then all of a sudden, and this is I'm going to tell you what I did after that happened, as I looked at Josh and I said, okay, that's not right. I don't need some ghost sticking their butt in my face. So I said, okay, Josh, I'm going to do something, and I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do, but I want you to tell me what happens, okay? And this I'll also explain in another episode, but I just released all my energy and project it back out, and Josh goes, holy crap, Dad, he's gone. And Josh is like panning all around the room, the living room, the kitchen. He's walking down the hall, everywhere, trying to map the spirit in, and it was totally gone. And Josh comes back and he goes, what'd you do? And I said, I released my energy, because in order for that spirit to get close to me, I had to draw my energy in. And I'll